How is it going, team? And welcome back to the Average Jazz podcast. So, today, this is Book Club, episode 2, and we did my book in the last book club. If you're interested in that, that'll be in the description. Check that out on the episode list. But today, I'm going to jump into a book that probably got all of this started for me. Probably not the first self-help book I read, but definitely the first one to make considerable impact on me, my views on life, resonated with me quite deeply. I could sort of see myself in aspects of the narrative that the author was doing and coming from. Um, so yeah, we'll jump into it. This book is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Manson. A intuitive approach to living a good life. Worldwide bestseller. Bestseller in, multiple countries except Russia. It was actually banned in Russia. Putin, obviously, did give a fuck about giving a fuck. But yeah, so diving into this book and why I liked it and sort of why I think it's important, it's a very important book in today's day of life, is that Manson sort of comes from the perspective that people should focus on things they can control, which is a theme you see a lot in self-help books, don't get me wrong, but I think the way in which he does it, he sort of goes back to good values and bad values, and something that, we're all grown up on, we all know right from wrong. But there's a difference in there between knowing right from wrong and acting on what is right and wrong. He makes the point that the good values should be reality based, not sort of bullshit and made to be absolute bollocks and unrealistic. It's all about things that are achievable and controllable, being constructive and immediate sort of things that, you can do, having honesty, being true with people, saying what you think, and definitely in my own life and experience is that, especially when you're younger and you struggle to fit in, which is something that I definitely did. I'm a confident person. I have a lot of time for other people, but I don't know, I always felt sort of maybe looking to be more accepted, more involved. Probably what led me into, being sporty and getting into drama and things like that to get the confidence to do that. But as I got older and I chased these things more passionately, probably is the word I'm looking for, but as I chased them more and looked into getting them more, I sort of realised that that's not who I am and that's not what I want to be. Sort of, when you're a teenager and you're trying to fit in, you sort of end up wearing clothes that you don't necessarily want to wear. You end up doing things you don't necessarily want to do, going to events that you don't really give a shit about. And I might be the only person that did that, but from my experience and speaking to other people, I'm definitely not. But it's just sort of the rite of passage, and we all do it. We're all probably guilty of doing it. And I think if you go down that path and you continue to go down that path, that it becomes very difficult to come off it. And this is what this book did. It sort of gave me the realization that I'm doing a lot of things for extrinsic reasons. I'm doing a lot for other people and for other people's, gratification, what they want, what they expect. And that doesn't fucking matter, really. Because ultimately, if that makes you unhappy, which it did for me, myself, and I just didn't realise that, I couldn't quite put my finger onto as why that was happening. And I'm not saying this book cured all my problems, but it was definitely a real eye opener because I resonated with it so much. And then we go into in contrast to the good values, some of the bad values that I meant there, sort of doing things that are beyond personal control, aiming for things that are beyond personal control. You know, like I probably did acting for the wrong reasons. I loved it. I loved doing it. I loved being up on stage and I loved doing getting the buzz. But fucking 16-year-old me, 17-year-old me, 17-year-old me Probably did it for like, I want to be rich and famous. I want to live the life. I want to be a multimillionaire. And, you know, wealth and financial freedom and stability are all definite things that we have to consider and should probably strive for, but it shouldn't be the main focal point of why you do something. I was definitely passionate about acting and that sort of avenue in my life, but when I got older and came away from it, wanted to pursue other things and maybe lost my passion. The only thing that was keeping me there was that I'm thinking, if I go to drama school and I do this, that's what people expect. I've done drama for all this time. People say I'm okay at it, I'm good at it. I'm in a college that does it specifically. But like when you sit down, you should know why you're doing these things. And I probably couldn't have done that. And I probably wasted a couple of years. But, looking back, I have no issue with that. I'm quite happy that I did that. I got a lot of skills from it. But if I'd read this book, sooner rather than later, I could have been in a completely different position. But if buts and maybes, I am where I am because of the decisions that I made. And that's why you probably shouldn't regret your decisions to a degree. But you're in the position you are because of the decisions you made. And I think if you have that mindfulness, that's great. But again, going back into some of the things that Manson mentions, seeking fame, wealth, external validation, like pursuing such values, it does lead to frustration and dissatisfaction because they depend on, again, extrinsic factors, external circumstances, other people's approval, and you're not going to please everyone. It makes them sort of outcomes unreliable and unrealistic to put all your eggs in that basket. But when you flip that and you change that perspective and you start to focus on intrinsic motivations and values that become meaningful to you, ultimately you're going to become happier. It's under your control. There is no one that there's no one to point the finger at other than yourself. And that's not saying go and shut yourself away and disconnect from everybody, because that's not what this book is saying. A lot of self-help books you'll see are like, oh, you need to go and do this to do this, and you need to go and do that to be happy. And that's true to a degree, but not all self-help books are reflective of your current situation, your situation in the future, who you are as like an individual. I read something and I've got it up here that, really hit me hard and definitely something that I've done with other self-help books, which I may cover later on in the future. But while we're on about this one, I read something on Reddit a while ago, and I screenshotted it and just came back to it. And luckily I did because I think it's a valid point. And it says that self-help and guidance is effective depending on where you are in life. So there's times that I've read books and people have been like, this is the best book I've ever read. It's the most useful and insightful book that I've ever read. And I think absolute shit. But I could read that again now and it'd be completely relative to me. I could read this again. I could read the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck again and think, wow, one absolute piece of shit. Like, full of bomb, full of jargon, blah, 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 this and the other. That's not how I feel about it. But, at the point in which I read it in my life, this resonated with me deeply. But that's not to say I come back to this now or in 5 years or whenever I read it again and feel the exact same about it. So this is something that I definitely wanted to put across with my book, with other books, is that it might not be for you. It might not be for you as an individual, but that might just be now. It might not be now. In the future, it might be the best thing you ever read. So sort of a tangent away from that. Maybe give something a try. If you didn't like it once, maybe go back to it. But going back to the subtle art. So like the three things that I wrote down, four things, sorry, that I wrote down that I really sort of liked about the book was the counterintuitive approach to happiness, focusing on finding better problems instead of avoiding them. So like, you know, he talks about tackling problems head on rather than just burying your head in the sand, and sort of the happiness that gives you when you complete them difficult problems. And that's so true to life. You know, a lot of us just ignore what we do and why we do it, just sort of put it off. And but it's still there looming in the background. But when you tackle it and you complete it, you get that sense of achievement, and you're like, why did I do that sooner? Yeah, it was difficult, but I've learned X, Y, and Z from it. The importance of values, something for me that I didn't really clock onto until I was older. I think values are sort of this fugazi thing of like when you're younger, like have good values. I don't think, well, I definitely wasn't emotional. I didn't have the emotional intelligence or the awareness to be like, what are my values as a person? Until I got older. Probably, like I said, when I read this book, when I was like in my early 20s, late teens. But it is crucial to give attention only to the things that align with your values, and you as a person, and the things that are integral to you. Because why give time to things that aren't? And I think, there's a lot of vanity in the current world, social media, who's wearing what, who's got what bag, who's driving the flashiest car, shit like that. And again, it goes back to being extrinsic and being temporary. And some people get happiness from that. I'm not here to preach that that's wrong, but for me as a person, and the vast majority of people I know, that vanity and things of, you know, superficial items only bring momentary happiness and joy. But yet we live in a world that, you know, you're down on the pecking order if you don't have said things. And I think when we remove ourselves from that way of thinking and that sort of echo chamber, you do just become happier. And I've definitely experienced that. Like, it just makes so much sense to just not spend £300 on a t-shirt or £700 on a pair of trainers and then have no money for the rest of the month. I'm not saying I'm some like financial guru because I'm shit with money, but I'm a lot less shit because I don't have that, like keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up with the Kardashians, which I never knew that's where it come from. Keeping up with the Kardashians was a play on keeping up with the Joneses, which I think if we Google what does keeping up with the Joneses mean? So the pressure to compare oneself to one's neighbour and strive to accumulate the same material goods or social status. So that's definitely, it's got to be where keeping up with the Kardashians come from. They're just the modern day Joneses. But think about how many people that idiom refers to are just the pressure to compare oneself to one's neighbour and strive to accumulate the same material goods or social status. Obviously not your neighbour, but I think that's because it's like an olden world saying. It's just everyday people. That's why social media is like, it has its place, it has its purpose. It's great for certain things, but if it controls your life, it is toxic. And then a massive one, the third point which I wrote when I had a little skim through. I'm probably butchering this, but yeah, this is what it is. It's only going to get better with practice. But the third one, the three and four are probably the biggest ones for me. Is embrace, well, three before we get into four. Three is embracing failure, how to get comfortable with failure, and how that can lead to self-improvement and resilience. So when we think about resilience, we've talked about this in the podcast a lot. We look at like the brilliant people. I mean, they are brilliant people, like Goggins, Cam Haines, Ross Edgley, Fergus Crawley. Just people that come to my mind of like unbelievably resilient, unbelievably just freaks, one percenters, swimming for like what did you fucking 36 hours non-stop. Goggins running hundreds of miles on broken bones. That's what we think resilience is, and that's where we compare ourselves again, going back to keeping up with the Joneses. We think that if we can't do that, we're not resilient people. That's bollocks. Like, if you turn up to a job every day that you dislike because you know that, in a month it's going to get me the opportunity to leave, all I need to do is keep turning up, keep doing what I need to do, then this day I am done. That's resilience. Turning up and doing something you don't want to do because you know it has something better in place with the outcome is resilience. But learning how to fail and be comfortable with that is massively, massively important. Everyone who is successful, everyone who has been in a position of being at the top of their game has failed. As long as you start treating failure like a lesson to learn, it's a complete mindset shift, and something I was definitely guilty of. And it really channels nicely into number four, which is letting go of perfection. And I think them two sort of marry together and sort of go hand in hand. Because if you start learning to let go of perfection and just learn from the failures of trying to strive for it, that's massive. I think you should learn to aim for excellence and ignore perfection because perfection's unattainable. And you got these things that like, oh, you're a perfectionist, you're this, that, and the other. But it's sort of counterintuitive again saying that word just because we're on the topic. But if you're a perfectionist, you probably never know when to stop. You probably never know when to give in. You probably ignore certain things that would make you better because you're so fixated on one end goal. But when you learn to fail, and you learn that, oh, I tried this way, that's not the way for me. I need to assess that failure, go back and look at the root cause and what created it. Well, then ultimately you become a better person. You get comfortable with it and you can apply it going again in the future to then be successful. Like, what was it? I think, oh, what was it? What was the example that I had in mind? It was sort of one of the social media platforms. They were saying that they kept trying it, they tried different names, tried different ways of doing it. But because they were just resilient and unruly and just kept going back and applying what they'd learned, they then came up with like one of the biggest social media platforms. Was it Facebook? Terrible of me. Should have done my research better. I've got a laptop in front of me here, but again, we'll just move on with that. But the last one, letting go of perfection. Life is imperfect. It has imperfections. They are inevitable and they're unimportant. Massive. I mean, just put that up somewhere and look at it and just remember that it probably doesn't matter that much. Don't give a fuck. And that's the point of the book. Like, we get so hung up on the most minute things, the micro rather than the macro. We forget about the macro, the big things, and then it all starts crumbling down because we're sort of fixated on doing one little thing perfect, when in essence we should be doing multiple little things very well or good or just even average to make the big things even better. So looking at like the philosophy of the book, the importance of choosing what to care about and letting go of trivial concerns, that as a person is so hard to do because we're just bred, I think, in this modern world to be concerned about trivial things, to give a shit about trivial things. And we probably choose the wrong things to care about. I think because we get so much access to data and so much sort of input constantly, our brain is just going, just can't figure what to focus on. But then when you step back and you go back to your core values and your integrity as a person and you understand what that is for you, it's a lot easier to separate the wheat from the chaff and like fixate on what it is you want to do, who you want to be, what you want to be known for. And I think that's so important. And then embracing reality. This book literally teaches the value of accepting hardships and imperfection as a part of life's journey. Talking about his own journey when he was like 30 and he got caught with weed in his locker and like he got kicked out of school and then he sort of went on this cycle of being like a bit of like the boy, a bit of a womanizer, not doing well in relationships because he was always striving for the wrong things in them. And then he had this epiphany, I won't spoil it too much in life, and he's like, fucking hell, what am I basing my life on here? What am I looking for? What am I doing? And there's a reason, you know what I mean? There's been millions of copies sold of this book. They made a film of it. If you can't be arsed reading the book, the film is okay. It's pretty good. It's an easy watch. You still get sort of the concepts of the book and everything, but the book is ultimately better. It has a sequel. I think it's Everything is Fucked by Mark Manson, obviously. But I've not read that yet. I will get back. Maybe I'll review that in a couple of weeks and see the comparison of the first one and the second one. But an interesting fact that I did find out, which I mentioned before when I was researching this, that it was banned in Russia for alleged use of vulgar language and highlighting cultural differences in what deemed appropriate in literature in Russia. So yeah, definitely not a bestseller in Russia. Putin was not a fan, which I didn't know. So a little interesting fact about the book. But yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. This was just a little sort of a little overview, a little review, how the book impacted my life, sort of the topics that it touches on. I'm not really going to like go into it page for page because I don't think anyone wants to listen to me doing that for an hour. Just a quick one, so you can hear my dulcet wig and tones for the week. Back next week, hopefully, with a guest. Got some good guests lined up, so excited for that. Some exciting news potentially coming up in the next few weeks as well. I'll keep you posted on that. But before we go, a massive shout out to the sponsor, Bit of a Strength, the boys, nice one, for all supporting the pod. If you like their stuff, which you definitely will, check them out at www.bitofastrength.co.uk. When you buy something, because you definitely will, because it's fire. Use the code AverageJack and get yourself 20% off. If you want to know more about what I'm doing, want to sign up to my newsletter, check out the website, head over to www.jackmckeenan.co.uk, sign up to the queue, 3-minute newsletter. Each week, different topics, different points, a bit about my life, some actionable tips. Check out the YouTube, subscribe to whatever you're listening on, leave us a review, share it with your pals. It helps more than you can ever imagine. And yeah, I appreciate everyone that listens and everyone that helps support the pod. It does mean a lot. Turning up, speaking to a camera is getting easier. But look forward to the next book club and look forward to the next episode. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you got something from it. And peace.